Welcome. In this video, we're going to take a look at Apex Looper feature in Brobench. So Brobench has a Apex module where you can author anonymous Apex, and then you can save those Apex scripts and run them if you have a script that actually run often for your testing or maybe for administration purpose. So we have come across a lot of situations where you need to run a particular script in production, for example, with some delay in between them. For example, let's say that clears some stuck jobs or maybe delete some records which are to be cleaned up, whatever reason. So if you want it to be do it for a long term and it is not a temporary issue, make sure that you convert that particular script into appropriate the batch or a queuable job so that it becomes part of a Salesforce platform. But if you want to use it just for administration purpose temporarily, and if you want to loop it, there are two ways to do that. Of course, you can write a script and then you can put a Apex loop in the for looper. For example, let's say you can put like this, okay, and you can write your loop and then this will loop. However, keep in mind that you can't put a delay between the various loops when you put a loop like that. And the second thing, that when you put a for loop as part of the anonymous Apex and run it, it runs as a one transaction. So you get a one governor limit for all the loop iterations, how many ever that you want to do. So if you want to get a new transaction, then you want to make sure that you run a loop for a particular time, then exit, then come back and exit again. So that is where the Apex Looper can be very helpful. Okay, so the Apex Looper is you can specify a set of script or one or more scripts, whatever that you're looking for, and then you set how many times you want to iterate that particular script and what delay in between each iteration or each execution. It also has a capability to feed some input. For example, you can specify a CSV file, or you can specify inline CSV, or you can specify SOQL query that so that you can execute the query and use the data to feed into the script so that you can run it in various transactions. So it has all of those capabilities. So let's go deep dive into that. In a simple use case, you can select a script that you want to run. In this case, I just have some I just have a script. Let's go make it a little bit more interesting. So let's say okay, so let's put a current time. So when you execute like that, it runs the script for the first time or only one time. For example, when you go to this, you see that it is completed and it has this particular script that executed at the time. So if you want to run in a loop, you can select this and then you click on this drop down and then you click on the execute with Apex Looper. So when you do that, it comes with this particular dialog where it shows the script that you have selected. Of course, you can go change it, if you want to go any modifications, whatever. You can specify the loop type, how many times you want to loop. You can loop by the count. So that then in that case, you specify how many times you want to loop. As simple as that. Or you can specify a by input. Okay, so you can come back to that by input later point in time. In a simple use case, let's go and specify I want to loop this particular script 10 times. So you have some configuration to say what is the delay before you start the loop. For example, let's say once you start the loop, you want to go make some changes or iterations or whatever. You can specify. It defaults to a second, just to give a little bit of break. And you can specify if there is any error. You can specify how many times you want to retry the error. So keep in mind, when you run a script, there are two kind of errors. One is that compile error, where there is a syntactical issue in the script, as well as a runtime execution error. So there is nothing wrong with the script, but script fails. For example, the data is not available, or it is not able to edit or update a particular record, what have you. It's a whole bunch of reasons. So that it doesn't retry the compile time errors, because if there is an error in the script, even if it try 100 times, it's not going to get any better. So it doesn't retry them. But there's an execution error, then this attempt will tell you how many times it's going to be retried. retried. It defaults to 3, but you are free to specify whatever the number that you want. And you can also specify if there is any error, even after retry, if the error is not successfully taken care of, then you can specify if you want to stop the looping or if you want to continue with the next loop. Ignore that particular loop, continue with the next one. So if you check this checkbox, then it will continue with the next loop. It logs, of course, that hey, you have an error while running a particular loop, then it will continue. In the next section, you have a delay that configured run between the iterations. For example, when you run a loop, if you want to wait for, let's say, 30 seconds or 45 seconds or whatever the time is, you can specify the loop. So there is no limit how long you can wait, as long as you want to make sure that the window is not actually closed, then it'll continue after that particular day. There are multiple ways to specify the loop. For example, you can specify a fixed 1 second delay, or let's say a fixed 5 second delay if you want to, or you can specify a random. In this case, you specify a minimum and the maximum delay. Let's say minimum is 1 second and the maximum is 5 seconds. Then for each iteration, so it's going to pick a random value between that and then runs the script in the waits for that particular time and then continue with the next iteration. You can also specify exponential, where you can say initial delay and then exponential factor and then max delay. So for each attempt, it will multiply. As of now, it'll add 50% more than what's the current iteration. So for example, if it is a first iteration is a 1 second and the second iteration is going to be 1.5 seconds, then after that, 2.75, something like that, it'll go. You can change any of these values. Then the max delay is that after exponential factor, it's going to cut off to that particular delay. Let's say you want to go up to 30 seconds, then after that you want to stick at maximum 30 seconds. It can be useful. So for now, let's go and specify random, which is a 1 second and then 5 second delay. So we're running again to review. This is a script that you want to loop, and we want to loop for 10 times, and then a delay, 1 second delay, and we want to retry if there is an error for 3 times. Then let's say I want to continue in case of an error, and then between each iteration, I want to wait between 1 to 5 seconds. Okay. So when you execute, it will create, and then you can see that it started the script. Make it a little bit bigger. So it is, it picked a random delay of 2 seconds, in this case 2.5, it's waiting, and then it is continuing. Okay. So while it is running, you can also see that it logged some details corresponding to that particular request, so that you can go back and check, hey, what request that you had there. You can review that, you can save the log if you wanna refer that particular piece later. Let's get completed. So then after that, we can start one more time with a bigger one so that we can try out other controls. Okay. So it's completed the loop, various delay in between them. And then finally it logged that there are no errors, right? It completed with 0 errors. So all executions were successful. And then it shows the data. So you can clear the log, so it will remove all of this, or you can edit the request to continue to do the looping one more time. In this case, it preserves all the settings that you had made, including the script. You can make further changes. Let's go and specify the loop for 100 so that we'll have some time to go show other controls that you can do while the loop is running, and then the same delay of 1 to 5 seconds. So if you re-execute it, so it starts the delay. Okay, it has some details. So you can see that you can continue to edit the request while it is looping, but you can't change some of the attributes. You can change the script, okay, but you cannot change the loop count or the loop input, because that controls the overall iteration, so that cannot be changed. However, the delay and all that, those things you can control them. For example, let's say I want to specify the delay between 3 and 5 seconds, then all the loops after, okay, so they will use that particular delay. Okay, in this case, it is 4 seconds. So you can pause the execution. Let's say if you want to pause for whatever reason, in this case, it will pause after the one successful completion of an execution. It will pause, and then you can resume. So it will continue with that particular loop count. You can stop completely. And if you do that, of course, it will prompt you if you want to stop it. So it actually stops. So you can't continue. You can't resume that particular loop. Right? So however, you can re-execute from the beginning again, but it doesn't resume from the time where you paused it. Then you can go back here, for example, re-execute it, Okay, so it will continue to go like that. Of course, you can clear log. If you have a lot of log, you can clear it, and then you will be able to see the details. So let's go, and then you can stop it, and then we'll continue with other features. Okay, so that is the basic execution of the Apex Looper, which is the by fixed count of how many times you want to loop. The second way to do that is to feed the input into the script, and you can refer them using the dynamic variables. So the variables can be referred using a syntax like this. Okay, so 2 curly braces. So this is the same syntax that is used in a lot of industry other places. You can specify whatever the variable that you want to feed in. So let's say that I'm going to feed account ID, and then as well as I want to feed account name into this particular script, so that when we run, it will display the account ID and the name as it is being queried. Okay, so now I can go choose here, execute the Apex Looper. In this case, I'm going to specify the input. Okay, so let's say in this case, I want to specify inline CSV. So the CSV can just copy and paste here. Let's say ID and the name. So let's say ID is 123. So name is Boeing 456. Okay, so let's say Salesforce, this simple use case. So there are 3 records that are specified with the ID and the name as 2 different variables, and I'm referring them here. Notice that the name of the field doesn't have to match exactly, so it's a case insensitive lookup. So, and when you specify this, because it limits the number of loops to number of records that you have specified here. So in this case, it will loop again. It will apply the same, the fixed, the delay, whatever the delay that you configured, but the loop count is going to be max 3 entries or 3 iterations. So if we go run it, you can see that it is running the script. Okay. So notice that when you use by the input, it logs the script that are actually generated that's going to run. So you can see that it fed 1, 2, 3. There's a first record that we had, and then the Boeing, and the second record Microsoft, and the third record Salesforce. So it completed 3 loops because there were 3 records. It fed all the 3 records into the script, and then it completed. Similarly, you can actually select from, let's go and edit this request. So then instead of CSV, I want to use SFDC query. So let's say I want to do select ID name from account limit 10. So I'm querying 10 records. It could be any query that you can successfully execute. Okay, so I'm selecting 10 accounts, and then I'm selecting ID and the name, so that ID and the name will be fed into that particular script, and the script will execute for 10 times, because in this case I'm going to fetch 10 accounts. Okay, if I execute it, so you can see that it started. Okay, so it is running the loop of 1 time, 1 to 10. Okay, so it has 2 to 10, and then it completed 10 of 10 and without any errors. And each time, notice that it actually logged the ID that it queried as well as the name of the account that it feeds in. Okay, so you get the idea. So from this one, you can do any kind of processing. Okay, so let's do a little bit more processing. For example, let's receive this particular ID as a variable, and so that I can use that variable to query the data. So in this case, let's say I want to specify ID. And then I want to query this account and show the data for that particular account. So let's say select ID name Blink City from account where ID is equals to ID. So keep in mind the variable substitution is a plain string replacement from Brobench point of view. Okay, so wherever it sees this particular variable, that particular piece will be replaced by the variable name, so that you want to make sure that after replacing it is still a valid syntax. For example, if you forget to put single quotes around there, then it's just going to replace it, and then ID will become, for example, the script will become ID string ID is equals to this, but this is not a valid Apex, right? Because it's a string that need to be enclosed. So make sure that you keep that in mind when you're authoring the Apex for the looping. So I specify the ID, and then I can go run this. So let's go replace this particular one with the current account that you're running. So now if I run this particular one, and then okay, so I want to run with the looper, and then let's say I want to specify with the socle. Let's copy this whole thing and then go and edit the request so that I don't have to specify all of the details. Then as of this query ID and the name, it is still there. The fixed delay, which is still there. So we're good. So we can go execute it. Okay, let's go clear the log. So you can see that each time it's generating a new script. Okay, so this is a new Apex script that it is logging, and then it is running that particular script. Okay. So keep in mind when you're running this one, it disables the complete logging, because it could be running loop a lot of times, and you don't want to clog up or take up all the debug log space in particular org. So it doesn't actually request any log, so it's going to be zero logging impact from this one. However, if you want to see how this behaves, so then you would have to execute either straight execution by specifying your own value. In that case, it will show the complete log. For example, let's say take this account ID and then run this here, and then if you do the normal execution, then it will run one time and then it shows the log like this. Okay, so this is the Apex Looper functionality in Brobench. So this is introduced in version 4.7, and it is included as part of the Enterprise Edition, which is targeted towards administrators and then advanced developer needs. Okay, so thank you. I hope you guys like this capability, and then share any feedback if you have. Thank you.